What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so Chris Broussard of Fox Sports is in hot water right now for using a slur while describing James Harden's move to the Clippers. He used a slur that was formerly used for those who were mentally challenged. All right? It's a slur that begins with R that has probably been out of fashion since at least the early 2000s to use for people who are mentally challenged, right? So in this audio, which I'm about to play, from First Things First, a show that stars Chris Broussard, Nick Wright, aka Nick Wrong, and Kevin Wildes, he's talking about how he doesn't understand why James Harden was so hell bent on going to the Clippers anyway, considering that James Harden wants to be a first option player. He's voiced his desire to be a first option player, where on the Clippers at best, he's going to be a third option guy. Leaving the team, the Sixers, where he was the second option. So he said it doesn't make any sense. Like thinking, like common sense wise, it doesn't make any sense. Hence why Chris Broussard used that term, which I don't think he meant to be offensive, but it is what it is. So before I play this audio, I just want to warn people, the R word will be used. This is from the Young Turks.
You ever say I want to go to the Clippers in the first place?
Because they're the only
he
team
knows
that
he's going to be the third option.
They're the only team that can pay him, and they're a desperate
But he's
organization.
not going to
All right.
be. You think he thinks he's going to play like he did?
I think he's not going to get to play the way he wants, and he's going to move, but it's not going to work well.
Nick,
Is
the man retarded? I mean,
shouldn't use that word, but sure.
Developmentally disabled?
Sure. This is...
Right. So that's him using that term. Later on in the broadcast, when I say later on, like maybe moments later, he apologized for using that phrase. And he talked about how he had a family member who was mentally... Excuse me. He had a family member that was mentally handicapped that they buried a couple of months ago. And, you know, they try to clean it up really nice, but you know how people are. The damage is done when it comes to some people. The damage is done. And people, you know, live to cancel other people. Especially people who they suspect have ulterior viewpoints than they do. Now, this is the thing about Chris Broussard. And this is what I noticed in this Young Turk video. This Young Turk video, which I got that audio from, they tried to show different sequences where Chris Broussard voiced his opinion on certain things which seemed conservative or out of date or out of step with today's liberal media. Now, look, the media is always sort of skewed liberal since probably the days of the 30s and 40s, or at least the 50s and 60s, I'd say. But now it's exceptionally liberal, with, of course, the exception of, you know, some of your independent news outlets, Fox News and things of that, you know. But Chris Broussard generally is religious. He's also of an older generation. I think he's from Generation X. He's in his 50s. He grew up in a different time period. I think, quite frankly, that we should give people like that slack because they grew up in a different generation. I'm not saying they should have carte blanche to say any and everything they're thinking, but some, you know, modest offenses should be there should be, you know, like just look, just say, okay, look, try not to say that again. And if they continue to say it, then okay, yeah, fine them, punish him, whatever, suspend them, maybe even ultimately fire him and keep doing it. But look, when Chris Broussard was 27 years old, that was a perfectly okay word to use for the most part on TV. Especially considering the fact that sometimes when you do podcasts and then you do TV, Look, what you can say in a podcast, you can't say on television. But sometimes you can get a little mixed up. Look, we know there's certain words you just can't say anyway. And there are certain words that you can definitely say on a podcast that you can't say on television. But that's one of those words that, yeah, you shouldn't say it. But, it kind of depends on who you're saying it around. Right? I believe what's going to happen is push is going to come to shove, and I think Fox Sports is probably going to suspend him for about a week or something. That's my thinking. They're going to suspend him for about a week because of criticism. I already saw articles already talking about this. Him using the R word and all of that, right? Another thing, I was just alluding to this, and I want to get to this point now. Chris Broussard is a man that has, in the past, spoke out against certain lifestyles, certain NBA players who live certain lifestyles. And when I say lifestyles, I'm not talking about just sexuality, but just in general, premarital sex. He's talking about a lot of these different things. And in a secular society, these things are seen as, quote, offensive. And no longer just, a decreasing viewpoint from individuals as we become more and more secular and less religious. The opinion of Chris Broussard was once a majority opinion. That's not the case anymore. So I'm like this, I think this is all a bunch of BS. The man apologized. I don't think he had any malice in his heart when he said what he said. And I'm not the biggest Chris Broussard fan in the world. I'm not. I'm not a fan of this man at all. But I don't believe that he said that with malice in his heart. But I think that they're probably going to suspend him just for pressure. There are a lot of powerful leagues and a lot of powerful organizations and entities out here, And at the end of the day, they're probably going to suspend him. I would say for maybe a week or so. And I don't know. I just think it's getting to a point where people don't have the power of forgiving. It's like we live in a gotcha culture, man. And if you say something that you slip up there one time, people will look to see if they agree with your politics. And if they don't, they'll create a mountain out of a molehill and score some points for, quote unquote, their side. I could go deeper with this, but this ain't the right format for that. But we've seen recently, no matter how much you may agree with someone or how much a person says things that you agree with, a person can say something that you agree with 87 times in a row. And it's all good. But that 88th viewpoint is a polar opposite of what you feel. All of a sudden there's animosity. All of a sudden now you view this person with suspicion. Now all of a sudden you view this person with, as an antagonist. Now all of a sudden you're plotting against this person because you don't agree with what they got to say. And that's a sick society. That's a sick society that, it's going to be the downfall of this society when people have this groupthink mentality where you have to always agree with every freaking thing that somebody, the majority at least, agrees with. That's not how it works. Now, I'm not trying to cop out, be a cop out for what he said. It was, it's not right what he said, but I just don't think that he had malice when he said that. And plus, I'm gonna say another thing. Sometimes we say words that they don't necessarily have the same original intent. Like, I think when he said that, and I'm not trying to be in Chris Broussard's head, but I suspect that when he used the R word, he really means it more like, is he, we I gotta be careful how I use for words here. I think he meant it more like, is this guy like thinking this, like what is he thinking about like here? Like it doesn't make any sense. Like, why would you go to an organization when you want to be the man? You want to be this 30-point per game scorer. You want to lead the league in scoring again. But obviously, you're not going to do that here. Unless James Harden's coming in to create some chaos. So, to a guy like Chris Broussard, it doesn't make any sense. Why would you go to a team where you're going to be lower in the pecking order than you were in Philly for scoring? So to him, it doesn't make common sense. Hence, is he R-E-T? I mean, he should have used that phrase, but it came to mind. And you know what's funny? He probably used the R word because he didn't want to say the C-R-A word that ends with the Z and Y. Because he probably thought that would have been offensive, which it would have been. We just live in a society now where we can't use certain terminology anymore. We can't say someone's committing career S-U-I, you fill in the blank. We can't use that because it's offensive to people and that have gone that route or tried to do that self-harm route. We just can't say things. It's getting to a point where it's harder and harder to express yourself. And I don't like that. And to be honest with you, I can't stand that type of society. I can't stand that. I can't stand that we're in a society where we have to always be on our P's and Q's about how we want to express ourselves because we're afraid that we're going to offend somebody. When in reality, look, and I get it, when you're on television, that's the price you pay. But what I don't like is that increasingly in society, we or you and I can't say what we want to say. I'm not talking about saying things intentionally to hurt people's feelings, but we can't express ourselves properly because we're going to offend some group or somebody who only makes up 0.2% of 1% of the population. At that point, you can kiss my ass. But anyway, that's just my opinion. And then another thing I want to say, too, that maybe I shouldn't make this joke, but to be honest, couldn't you make the argument that the people that supposedly would be offended by this wouldn't even get it anyway?